Hello, listeners, and now viewers. We are now on YouTube, so if you want to see a video edit of the podcast, that is now available to you. On today's episode, we've got the wonderful Sophia Spring. We talk about workflow, editorial, we talk about process, we talk about lighting groups, and we talk about the current state of our world. And it's a fantastic chat. So open your retouch software, grab a drink, coffee, whatever your poison is, and let's go.
Morning. How are you doing,
Good
Tom?
Morning. Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. For our listeners, this is you can also be our viewers now, because this is the first episode we're doing as a actual video.
I can only apologise for what I look like. But I have put a comb through my hair for the first time this year, so swings and roundabouts.
Well, I've got my wig on as well, so yeah, we're all good. Yeah, you'll be able to view this over on our YouTube. Tom is incredibly excited because he gets to show off some toys. Now, I realise, obviously, we don't want to make this too exclusive for video viewers, so I will do my best to describe anything that we show on camera. We just thought it would add a little bit of depth and make it a bit more personable, and yeah, spread the reach and the love.
That's it. I mean, that is the only reason we've done it, really. Because
if
obviously
it wasn't cringy enough listening to our own voices, we thought it'd make it even more cringy by having to look at ourselves on camera.
Well, I got told years and years ago that I had a face for radio. And so, unfortunately, we're kind of really marching forward with that. And now I've got a face for YouTube.
So, well, that's the thing. Back then, they didn't know YouTube was going to be a thing. So,
well, that's it. So who's laughing now? Still. But yeah, I mean, it has been, for someone who has previously talked about not buying a lot of equipment, and, I remember doing something a long time ago called the Great Simplification and all sorts of stuff like that. I have now picked up a couple of bits of...
that every time you mention the Great Simplification, it plays some kind of Soviet era fatherland music, kind of the great I don't know, it's something so Mao about it. It's great.
Let me rephrase it then. It was never really the Great Simplification. I tried unsuccessfully to simplify my life, and I did manage to get rid of a lot of kit, which I then sadly had to rebuy, because it turns out as photographers we do need quite a lot of equipment, and I had gas. But now I've got my spending under control. So let me introduce you to a couple of new bits of kit. So I've talked about this one before, and if obviously you're watching this on YouTube, listeners. Yes, exactly. For the listeners, you've heard this before. But this is my Mule Carts camera ring, which is actually very hard to get in focus on the camera. But basically, what you do there is you put the camera. You doesn't come with this super clamp, but you clamp that super clamp onto something. And for the listeners, it is a steel ring that has a spigot on.
It looks a bit like what a gymnast would hold if they were hanging from the ceiling. Yeah,
exactly. It looks like the rings, right? And then what you do is you just plonk the lens down through the centre of it, and you can rest your camera on set, because, my digis and my team know I am terrible for lobbing the camera there, or just putting it under someone's foot, or just chucking it in a bush. I don't really care about the equipment, so I just put it down wherever. And then everyone always goes, "Oh my God," and then runs over and gets it. But this thing now means that I know exactly where it's going to be, and it's protected because it's got this nice kind of soft tape bar, like bar tape, that goes around it. And yeah, it's been one of my favourite finds. But and I should mention the place I got this from was the really nice guys at First Digi, and I ordered it in from Berlin. And those guys are so nice to deal with. I would pick it up. I think it was about £100, which I know might seem like a lot of money, but it's already kind of paid for itself in me not kicking the camera about. So my team are very thankful for it. So, and then the second part of it, I have spoken about these guys actually in the past. They're a Ukrainian company called Mule Carts. One of our previous guests, LS, introduced me to them years ago, and I've just had my first order turn up. And it's odd. It's odd stuff because it makes a good noise. It sounds like a good drum.
So for our listeners, it's a it looks like a big inbox tray, but
It's
with a super clamp attached to it.
Yeah, and
with
it's
a nice
and it's,
felt bottom.
It's a really nicely built utility tray, right? And you can have this extra side tray that you can kind of bolt on, and it's got this perfect mount on the bottom of it that bolts onto the bottom of the tray and then bolts onto and a super clamp bolts onto the tray, and the tray then bolts onto the super clamp. So it's really solid and secure. And then it's got this nice little bit underneath the super clamp, this arc here, which is very hard to show you because of how I've got it orientated. The arc here, which then rests up against the stand, which prevents the tray from bending,
from dipping down.
Yeah. So it's a really nice little bit of kit, and it's foam lined. But I don't know if you guys are ever on set and you need somewhere to chuck your wallet, your keys, your phone, your little notepad or your iPad or anything that you're trying to just bits and pieces, drinks, sweets, crisps. I mean, I have two of these. I bought two of them, and they get full straight away.
With sweets.
Mainly,
just full of jelly babies.
Mainly gummy sweets. But they are really good value. They're really nicely finished. They're like black anodized aluminium. They're super strong. I've knocked them about a lot, and yeah, I really like them. And the guys who run the company are really nice. So what's not to like, really?
It's often than running a company out of Ukraine, given everything that's going on there.
Yeah, so I think I don't know quite how they do it, but they end up shipping the stuff. It comes via Poland, and yeah, it's amazing how quick they were able to get it to me. It did take a week or two, but given everything that's going on, I was super impressed, and they were really on it with the comms and stuff like that. So more power to them.
Yeah, that's a week is nothing really. Obviously we're so used to kind of having stuff done next day with things like Amazon. But I've had something that I ordered in December. It's one of my pet hates. You order something online, it says it's in stock, and then it turns out it's not in stock. But you've already paid for it. It is what I ordered at the end of December. It still hasn't turned up. We're now in mid-Feb. No, wow. Early Feb.
Early Feb. Or late Jan, depending on when you want to believe that we record these. But that's what have you ordered?
It's a
life-size cutout of me.
Yeah. That's a Leatherman. Not that I already own a Leatherman Wave, which is a great tool for having on set actually, because of the bit kits that they sell with them. It's a Leatherman Signal, which is a bit more kind of designed for kind of camping and outdoors use. It's got
okay. So has it got like a slightly longer,
different tool setup
and a slightly longer knife?
I don't think the blade's any longer. It's more like it has a ferro rod built into it. I think it's got
sorry,
a ferro rod, like a fire starter.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. Got it.
Some little bits and bobs, and it's kind of designed with an inbuilt clip, so you can kind of carabiner it onto something. They're great little tools.
Nice. Okay. How useful for set?
Well, still good because you can still use a bit kit with it, and the bit kit's the most important thing on them for me. Like that's the tool I use more than anything else. Would probably be the scissors and the bit kit.
Right. Okay.
The bit kit being that you can obviously put in various hex heads, Allen key heads, screwdriver heads, whatever. So. Because some of my base plates are kind of Allen key tightening, so that's something that's just being used all the time.
Okay, I have this one. So, and it's going to be very hard to see. We shoot these in black and white. It is the Leatherman Surge, and it is in black oxide finish. But I find this one, and yeah, you're right with the bit kit. If I'm right, they just slot into here, which is not going to focus, and then you can just pop the bit kit in there and then use it. I mean, I actually lost my bit kit. So Leatherman, if you're listening, there's a photographer who desperately needs a replacement bit kit.
There you go. That head is great as well. The micro screwdriver. The fact that they have one of those on it makes it actually a super useful tool. But I got the same as you, black oxidized.
I mean, it's just cool, isn't it? Like, it's just, I would say one of the coolest. My wife bought this for me when we first got together, and the Surge, she had to import it from the States because the Surge didn't come to the UK originally. And this was before Leatherman became, I mean, it shows my age. This is before Leatherman became like the name in multi-tools. And so she imported this thing from the States, and it's one of my favourite things I own.
This is mine's the Wave, which is actually slightly smaller, which I would. So I've got this Urge. I've got a mate Surge who left it here about 2 years ago, and I've been holding on to it from ever since. So I haven't actually used it myself because it's not mine. But
they are big and heavy
comparatively
to the Wave.
A lot bigger. Yeah,
and much heavier. The Wave is my dad actually has the Wave, and it's a really nice bit of kit. I would probably recommend the Wave over the Surge because it's just slightly smaller and lighter.
I can show you both next to one another.
There you go.
So for me, just having that one on set is probably about a centimetre shorter, and maybe half a 5mm, maybe 8mm, slightly narrower.
And the difference in weight, though.
Different in weight, yeah. Anyway,
that's
a very video heavy. Sorry,
yeah,
they're not always going to be like this.
No.
We're overexcited that we
are overexcited, and we're obviously just still playing with the medium. But yeah,
anyway,
what else, Greg?
What else?
Let me tell you about my week. 2 weeks actually, since we last recorded one of these. I have been running a QNAP server NAS drive for just over 2 years. And it has a 2-year warranty. And 3 weeks after the warranty expired, it died. And obviously, you suddenly go, oh, wow, oh, God, is all my backup safe? Is all the data there? Cool thing about QNAP NAS drives is you can buy a replacement chassis, take all the drives out, put them in the exact same order, and start the drive up, and it is like nothing ever happened. Apart from... that unit then blew up 6 hours after me plugging in and starting it all up. And I was just like, at this point...
maybe your content is just too hot to handle, Tom.
Well, quite. But at this point, I just thought, you know what? Actually, I'm a bit bored of running this NAS server. 2 units have failed in like a week. This is getting ridiculous. So I kind of took a really long, hard look at my data storage. And I was kind of going, well, actually... I've got stuff on here from 2004. No one ever asks me for... And if they do, it's kind of like once in a blue moon kind of request. So I feel like keeping all this stuff active is a waste of hard drive space and a waste of electricity because you're spinning these drives all the time. And also, bluntly, let's talk about cost. It's kind of expensive to maintain loads of running drives and spinning drives all the time because not only do I have... I have a nice SanDisk Professional 8-bay thing, which is really nice and fast. But then, because I've got so much stored on it, I have to have... in the office, I had the QNAP NAS, which then had 8 drives in it as well. And then I had 12 or 13 spinning disks in my offsite backup. And I'm kind of going, okay, fine. This is all okay at the moment, but... And the thing I do when I buy a spinning drive is I have a little Dymo label printer and I label everything. And I label the drive with when I bought it and where I bought it from. So whenever I'm kind of doing a moment like this where I'm kind of like, trying to figure out whether the, trying to figure out what to do from a storage point of view or things like that, I can look at the drive and just say, okay, well, this drive is 2 years old. It's still got loads of life left in it. Or this drive is 5 years old. I could do with replacing it. And what happened, the same time the servers blew up, I pulled the hard drives out and went, oh, these hard drives are now 5 years old. And then I went over to my offsite and I went, oh God, so most of these drives are 5 years old as well. So they're all out of warranty. And with spinning discs, it's not kind of if they'll fail, it's when. They're not, there's such a delicate medium really at the end of the day that they'll always fail at some point. And I was just like, okay, right, I need to figure out a long-term, solid way of backing this stuff up. So I have officially now moved my on-site and off-site backups to LTO tape.
Yes, which is not to be confused with cassette tape.
No, can you imagine? I would love it. I mean, those old TDK 90s. No, but LTO tape. If I show the video listeners that this drive here, that is 7 centimeters by 7 centimeters by 2 centimeters deep, now can store 18 terabytes on this.
This isn't going to age well.
No, I know.
It's like somebody showing a compact flash card and showing, and I can get 6 megabytes.
Look
on
at this new technology. Fast forward 20 years. It's like, look at this old guy talking about a tape. No, the great thing about tape is that. So I kind of did a load of research, and I have gone with Simply, who make the tape drive, and I'm using Archiware, the software. And they interface in a really nice way. Everything works, and I've been doing the backups. Now, you'll hear a lot about LTO tape in the next few years because LTO 9's come out and it's got this crazy 18 terabyte capacity. It's going to start making a lot of sense for loads of people like us to just be offloading all this dead data that we're just storing, and it's costing a lot to store. So I, at some point now, would like to get my archive down to last year and the current active year, and that would be, sorry, not my archive, that would be my working drive that I could have on a 32 terabyte RAID, right? So that would be a really nice thing, because that's less drives, less cost, less electricity, because we're running less drives, and you're not running a NAS, so you're not running them 24 hours a day, so from a cost point of view, and then you're not having to constantly refresh the drives.
What does the tape actually explain? What does it look like? What's it actually writing it onto? Is it?
Well, I can't actually show you because the tapes are completely sealed.
No, Tom, come on, it's video. I want you to get a hammer and open that thing up.
Mate, they're 200 quid a tape. I'm not taking a hammer to these. So you have a little barcode on the spine of it, and then it's just like a green plastic.
Hold that up a bit more so it focuses.
It's just a green plastic case.
That's better. Okay.
With nothing really. Nothing really to talk about. It's just a green plastic case.
It looks like an old Game Boy kind of cassette, but bigger. Yeah,
do you know what? That's not far off exactly what it kind of feels like.
So that's aging me.
But it's really I'm honestly really pleased, but I kind of want to temper any expectations of it. It does take a long time to do the initial backups, filling these 18 terabyte tapes. And the reason is, and what I got frustrated when I first started using it, but now I understand the benefit of it. And now I'm like, this thing's amazing. Is it checksum verifies every bit of data that it's copied to the drive. So when it copies the software Archiware, when it copies the initial bit of data over, sorry, this is getting really boring and techy. I'll speed it up. When the software copies it over onto the tape, it creates a hash. And then when it's finished copying all the data, it then copies each file back to the computer, generates another hash to make sure they match. And then if they match, then the file is good. And it's about as a good copy that's uncorrupted, and it's a complete copy. And then when you finish with those tapes, like this is my 2022 on-site drive. And that... Go on, sorry.
The actual connection and interface between the computer and the disk itself, not the tape, the disk that reads.
Thunderbolt 3.
Thunderbolt 3. So when you go in and you say, right, I want to go back to 2012 and access this shoot, it's Thunderbolt 3 speeds of accessibility.
No, so basically, when you're talking about data, your data chain is always as slow as the slowest link in the chain, right?
Right.
And so the tape drive... that I've been seeing speeds of up to 400 megasecond read and write technically to the drive. So and it gives you, the Archiware software gives you a nice little breakdown of your average data rates, and it'll tell you that you're averaging about 22 terabytes a day at this rate.
But would you be able to just access it? I'm sorry, I'm being an idiot, but that's my role on this podcast.
No, not an idiot at all.
Is it like accessible through Finder? You go on and you just like log.
No, it's
got
not.
To use the software.
So you don't. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but I'll try and be really, really quick with it because it's quite a long, drawn out subject. With tape, it's a linear file. It's a linear file system. So because the tape is just forever just being wound in the machine, it appends data to the end of the tape, or the end of data marker, technically. So what happens there is when you use a bit of software, the software creates a log. And so you can then restore files from the software, but you can then browse it in the software like it was mounted in the Finder, sort of thing, in a slightly more basic way. And then you can just say, like, I'd like to restore either the whole tape or these files or these folders. And then you can do that. And the reason I use Archiware is that it does incremental backups. So there's a few other bits of software available, but the one for me is going to be Archiware, because I can set it to do the incremental backups, and then that just appends the new data onto the end. But then when you go into the restore tab on it, for example, it will just show all the file structure how you would expect to see it, basically.
Okay. I think I dip into my archive all the time for edits and for treatments and stuff, so I don't know. We'll probably go back over this topic at another time, I think, when we've got a bit more time.
Yeah, I think so. It's a super interesting one. I mean, for me, my career has come in multiple stages. So I used to be a music photographer, and I mean that stopped when I stopped shooting music. For, 2013, 14, kind of, so a while back. So everything pre-2015 isn't really of any use to me. Yeah. I might every now and then get a request, but at that point I'll just pop the tape in and I'll find the file, as opposed to just having all this stuff just taking up space. It just doesn't see much point. And also, for example, we do one of the big things for me is that when we're doing video projects, I can now archive all the video files. I don't have to go through and be selective and clear out the space by getting rid of a few or anything like that. I can just whack it all on a tape and then just say, right, that is nice and secure. That's all good. So that is all permanently backed up. And there's also another thing to offer clients. You know, I can now offer secure long-term data storage by backing all their data up to their own tape. So it's, you know, it's horses for courses, because it's not going to suit everyone. But no. I just found that the accumulation of data over the course of my career has been quite, monumental, really. I've got so much data to store, and I'm a bit loath to get rid of anything because, I don't really like going through and being like, oh, that shoot's not important, because I like to think
because you never know. It might be valuable to train AI in the future.
Well, quite, yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. So I'm having a lovely time kind of backing up all these tapes.
Yeah. Well, if you're still with us after that,
sorry, that was quite a drawn out.
No, it wasn't drawn out. It was good. It's something I know nothing about, so I'm interested to learn about it. But
it's quite a complex topic. But when it's set up, it just works brilliantly.
Our listeners know that you love your data.
Oh yes. Yeah,
Mr. Betamax. So, shall we jump in? I know we've got quite a good and not lengthy, but good amount of time episode today with Sophia Spring. Well, we cover all sorts of topics with Sophia, but it's definitely I think it'll be a nice listen for everyone. We also wanted to, if you're still with us, we wanted to announce that we also have a Patreon now. So we finally got around to doing it. So if you feel like what we're doing is worth the price of half a pint these days, depending on where you go, or maybe a Wetherspoon's pint, actually. We're basically looking.
I wouldn't know.
We're basically looking to build our Patreon subscribers for $3.99 a month. We are offering access to a private WhatsApp group, which will allow you to contact us directly, but also be part of kind of a chat community that will be around the podcast, but also with your questions, your suggestions for the show, just generally kind of like a nice way to actually meet other listeners, etc. And also our long promised but soon to be with us socials. We are in the process of organising one, which is going to be in a pub in London, most likely, in the next couple of months. And if you join onto our Patreon and you get this link to the private WhatsApp group, you'll get information about that when it finally gets blocked into the diary. It's going to be on a Saturday night, and we're looking forward to actually meeting some of our listeners. So yeah, if you want to go along and subscribe to our Patreon, we will be building other tiers and putting out further content and kind of videos and stuff down the line. But at the moment, that's what it involves. And we'd love your support if you think it's worth your time and money.
Well, Greg's gone in there with the soft sell, and now I'm coming in with the hard sell. $3.99. I hate the fact that everything is subscription now. So apologies. We're obviously still going to keep the show as in the current format. So it's free to listen to, and you guys can still get hopefully tons of knowledge from it and from our guests. But if you feel that we've helped you, or it's been beneficial to listen to, or even if you've just thought, that's a great idea, $3.99, even if you do it just like as a one-off or something, it would be massively appreciated, mainly because I am desperate to buy Greg that new microphone, and honestly that can only benefit you guys as well. So
what are you trying to say? So if you do want to sign up, it's quite easy to find us. We are www.patreon.com/exposednegative. You can go there, find the page, and sign up. But without further ado, shall we jump into Sophia's episode?
Absolutely, let's go. On today's show, we have the amazing Sophia Spring, who is just an unbelievably talented portrait photographer. She's really known for her amazing group setups. Her colouring's fantastic. Her lighting's beautiful. And all round, I'm a big fan of her work. You can probably tell by the fact that I've just kind of completely overgone on the intro, but she really is that good. Sophia, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm a big fan of the podcast, as you know, so it feels pretty exciting.
I can't believe it. We were chatting before we came on air, started recording, hit the record button. And you've listened to it from, you must be one of our, not oldest listeners, because that doesn't sound right, but you must be one of our longest listeners.
Yeah, and I found it enormously comforting during the pandemic to, be able to listen to you chat away, and you've got such an amazing chemistry. And I love what you're doing. You've got brilliant guests. So I feel really honoured to be on the show.
Bless you. Oh, I just get the feeling this is just going to be a lovely recording, isn't it? It's going to just be one big love-in. This is going to be great. Well, honestly, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Well, look, for the people that maybe are listening who don't know, do you want to give us a little bit of background about who you are, what you do? I mean, and kind of how you kind of found your way and got into it.
So there's probably a lot of listeners out there that don't know who I am, but I am predominantly a portrait photographer, and I shoot a lot for the weekend supplements. I'd say those are my main clients, things like the Observer magazine, the Sunday Times magazine, the Guardian, people like that. And I've kind of been doing that the last few years, and then I also have some commercial clients, and I also work on my own projects. I brought out a book last year as well. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. And in terms of where I started, I'm afraid it's not a brilliantly exciting story, but I think I always loved taking photos as a child. I had a very keen amateur photographer who was our PE teacher at school, and she set up a darkroom. So I spent many happy hours in the darkroom developing my photos. But I never knew any other photographers. I didn't really think that was a career option that I could have. So I went to university instead and studied sociology and politics. And it was when I was there that I thought more about photography as a career that I wanted to pursue. So after my degree, I went to LCC and did a year-long diploma, which was it was an all right diploma. It was billed as a diploma in professional photographic practice. So the idea was you go and then you come out and you can be a photographer. Unfortunately, there was a year that out of 70 people in the year, only 3 of us are still working photographers today. And the diploma doesn't exist anymore because it is such a competitive industry. You can't really doing, promising people something that's not really going to happen. So after that, I went out and started trying to assist, and I did that for about 18 months. And the reason that I did it for quite a short amount of time was because I actually found it really hard to get assisting work. And I actually think this is quite a big problem in the industry, especially for women at entry level, is actually getting those assisting jobs. You know, I don't know if you know the statistic, but 70% of photography graduates are women, and only 13% of working photographers are women. So
13, 1-3.
1-3,
Wow.
1-3.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that insane?
That is mad. That is really wow. That's actually quite shocking.
So something's happening when these photography graduates leave. You know, that they're hitting lots of kind of hurdles, and they're not progressing to a career in photography. And that's kind of what I found. I mean, I don't know about you personally, but I would imagine that most of your assistants are men. I don't know. Am I?
Actually, no, not for me. No, I've just come off a 5-day commercial job using a female team,
amazing,
and I try and do it as much as I can. There are, you know, and I do not mean this to sound sexist. There are jobs where, unfortunately, I do need people my size, because we've got 40, 50, 60 kilo things going up overhead.
I know,
and I need people mainly who for the height. Weirdly.
I know. And I'm guilty of that as well. There are physical limitations about using female assistants, but I think this is the problem, that when you get these female photography graduates coming out of university and they're sending their CVs to the, 87% of male photographers working out there, they're not always getting those jobs. And that's kind of certainly what I found when I was assisting. I was always coming along as an unpaid second assistant. Which isn't sustainable, really. So I was having to work in a pub, 5-6 nights a week, and then doing unpaid assisting in the daytime, and it just really wasn't sustainable for me. And after about 18 months, I thought, oh yeah, sorry, Greg, carry on.
No. I was just saying, well, I think part of the issue is with fees. So in general, within the industry, I mean, actually, especially doing editorial work, it's actually quite difficult to get assistants on board, especially more than one, purely because you'd be giving most of your percentage of your fee away if you were to pay your assistant fairly. I think in London, if you compare, people always think that London's got kind of a big photography scene, and it certainly has compared comparatively with the UK. But if you compared London with New York or LA, the whole kind of industry is so much smaller, and actually using assistants is tougher because there's fewer jobs where you're going to need or have the budget to get a proper team in, comparatively, I think, anyway.
No, I totally agree.
There are photographers I speak to, and they say, they come up to me and say, oh, how do you make money on these smaller jobs? And I go, well, I know they're smaller jobs, so it's me, a camera, and a camera bag, and a lighting bag, and I try and keep everything as minimal as possible. And I'm like, oh, well, why do you say that? And they're like, oh, well, I like bringing out my 2 assistants, my digi, probably a runner maybe. And I'm like, what? You're losing your fee. It's costing you hundreds of pounds to do this. And I know some have a very good view on it, that it's kind of like a marketing effort, because they're almost kind of taking some money from their commercial projects to fund and make this editorial stuff as good as they can. But on the flip side of that, there are some people who now are kind of so entrenched with working with a big crew that they can't kind of just go out and grab like a stand bag or something like that. But that's not every photographer, obviously. Everyone's different.
I mean, I think if you're going to make a living in editorial photography, you have to have a skeleton team. So for most shoots, bring on one assistant, and we're both kind of doing digi and lighting together, and it's just like a collaborative effort. But yeah, certainly don't have the budget for a digi and an assistant on shoots.
I would love to quickly go back to actually using female assistants and kind of say, actually, I love working with female assistants. There's a very, very different vibe that a mixed sex team brings to a shoot. And I will quite often now, depending on the subject and who I'm photographing or the client, and I will choose how I sex the team. It sounds like a weird phrase, but
I do exactly the same as well.
Yeah, so kind of when you know it's going to be that kind of atmosphere, I might bring in just a male team. But actually, I love working with female assistants. They bring a real, for me, they bring a real leveling dynamic to my team, and so it never gets too blokey or like etc. And honestly, it's so much more pleasant for me, for the client, for the models involved.
No, absolutely. And I also think if you're photographing women, they want to feel represented on set. It's very overwhelming for a woman if she's not that used to having her photograph taken, to then be surrounded with, like, you know, 3 or 4 men that she's never met before, you know, kind of staring at her. So I think, you know, if we are going to put a message out to our listeners, and there are working photographers out there and they are men, do use women as much as you can, because we need to create more equality within the industry, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think it's speaking as someone who's done it a fair bit. I honestly, I think it's great. The dynamic of your team changes, and honestly, it makes for a way more pleasant atmosphere. And I love it. So I try and do it as much as I can.
That's amazing, Tom. And also, what you're doing is you're encouraging the next generation of female photographers as well. So they're learning from you, and which is amazing.
I think, especially, I'm ultra aware, having now had a daughter. I'm like, right, okay, it's on me. I have to make that. You know, I can't just sit by and let the F-22 just, you know. I mean, obviously they do a load of good work, but like, unless people like me are doing the, you know, making the change. Right. And I'm not saying that they're not. Oh God, that sounded terrible. But you know what I mean. They're doing amazing work. But unless we all step up and actually make the changes that we can make. You know, I can't become Jesus Christ, right? That sounds terrible. I'm a straight white male. I'm a straight white male, right? This is a conversation I think that needs to be had, right? I'm a straight.
Can I take the spade off you so you stop digging?
Well, can I just quickly finish? No, I'm very comfortable with where I am, but I do feel that the only way that I can really make a difference is by, you know, having a female team or kind of a partial female team, and
you've got to be
trying
proactive,
to
basically.
bring us 100%. What I'm trying to say in my absolutely ham-fisted way of doing it is diversity is a great thing, and I'm trying to do it as much on my team as possible, because I feel that when you are in a commissioning role and you are able to hire who you want, you should be able to make the choices that you feel ethically might be good to help forward the future of photography. Because the thing is, like, I would love for my daughter to grow up. And I want her to feel like she can do anything. And if she wants to go and be a photographer, or she wants to go and be an assistant, I want there to be plenty of opportunities there for her to do it when she gets to that point.
I think that's brilliant, Tom.
Sorry, that was such a shit way of saying it. I'm so sorry. Anyway, long story short, it's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed.
Sophia, what's your approach? I mean, do you get approached a lot by assistants and people wanting to assist you? And if so, what do you do about that? Because obviously we've both, myself and Tom, have both kind of had people emailing us and wanting to come in and assist, and sometimes it's just not the opportunities for people. But I do try and meet up with people when I can. Do you have that much? Do you get a lot of emails off people who are looking to assist? And do you think that sometimes as well there's, you know, you said you struggled to find assisting work when you came out of university. Do you think that to some degree that's because universities give off the sense that everyone who's a photographer has an assistant, and the reality is that actually, like we were saying earlier, sometimes you just work with skeleton crews, sometimes you go solo, depending on the job and depending on the fees involved?
So which question should I answer first? So the first one is that you were asking about whether people email me about assisting. And they do get in touch. And I have a folder where I keep all their emails, and I try and respond to everybody. And generally now don't meet up for a coffee with everybody, because it's just quite time consuming. You know, like, my time is really, really precious. So what I'll do is, if I like the sound of them an email and they've got a little bit of experience, or they just, you know, there's something about them I like, I might call them up, have a little chat, and then maybe get them along on a trial shoot, on a very low pressure shoot. So it'd be a shoot that I could have potentially done by myself, and then they can come along on that. And I honestly think that's the best way to kind of trial them. And I'm doing that increasingly more. And unfortunately I have to increasingly more, because I've got two first assistants who I absolutely adore, but you know, in the last few years, I'm not paying them any more than I did when they started out with me, because I can't, because of editorial rates. And I think they only work with me because we get on really well. But the rates I'm paying them, they can, you know, get 4 or 5 times that when they're doing kind of commercial jobs, which they, you know, they assist other photographers too. So I actually do have to use people that are relatively inexperienced in order to justify paying them those quite small fees. I don't know if you find the same as well, but it is kind of embarrassing going to, like, you know, a very experienced assistant and being like, I've got X amount for this editorial shoot, and it's, you know, a third of what they could get elsewhere.
It is a little tricky. I mean, I have quite a close knit team, I'm sure, as we all do, and I've got the people that I really love working with, and if I can, I'll work with them, you know, every single day if I can. But and a lot of the time the rates are not ideal, but when the rates are low, I'm able to make sure I look after them on the bigger commercial stuff.
Exactly.
And so it basically, if you look at it on a job by job, sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher, but over a year, I'd like to think that I pay quite well. And also I pay absolutely on time. An assistant will not wait for more than 36 hours for an invoice to be paid.
That's brilliant, Tom.
I don't do 30 days. I do 30 hours. Because it's just like, my contract with you is done. Like, I know we've talked about this in the past, but like, my contract with the assistant, we're good. Like, you know, you're not waiting for the client to pay me. You know, I was talking with an amazing photographer, a guy called Tom. Actually, it was a private conversation, so I probably shouldn't. His name was Jimmy. I've not done that well. Anyway, Tom, sorry, I'm going to talk about this. We were just talking about how it's just a respect thing. You know, they respect us to be able to, you know, an assistant isn't just there to help. An assistant is there if things go south, I need to be able to turn around to my assistants or my digi or whatever and just be like, help. You know, and they with their masses of experience and hopefully the fact that they like working with me, Sam and James and everyone else I use, I really hope that is the case. And hopefully then they'll be able to turn around and save the day. But then again, that's I guess that's the issue then, because the guys that you're using and the guys that we have to bring out on the smaller editorials, they can then use that experience because they deserve the higher rates, and then they kind of go off and they do that, and then we're kind of trying to find people. It's a bit tricky. I've also found, sorry to keep going on, I've also found that with the cost of living crisis, a lot of assistants are putting their rates up, and I'm kind of going.
They're putting their rates up, but they're putting their rates up, and our rates have not gone up in 10 years.
Yeah, and for me, at least, well, yeah, and I'm struggling because with some of my clients, I have fixed rates that have been agreed on a yearly basis, and so these guys are now. So I'm then having to pay 50 quid out of my fee to just kind of top their fee up to what they're asking for. And the trouble is, without being funny, I know how expensive everything is. You know, the cost of living at the moment is just crazy. So I totally get why the rates are going up. But I'm hoping that our rates go up at some other point as well.
Well, it depends what field you're looking at. You know, so I do a lot. I've been working with The Guardian. It was The Guardian weekend, and it's now The Guardian Saturday. And when I was, you know, assisting, how many years ago? 15 years ago, the rate was pretty much the same it is today, but you used to be able to go out for lunch after your shoot. You know, you used to be able to expense everything. And so that was 15 years ago. And the other day, we all got a pay rise, but the pay rise was £8.50 per shoot. £8.50, which is just, I mean, it's just like a slap in the face, right?
Well, that's a sandwich now.
Right?
McDonald's
so
meal.
At least they're covering part of lunch.
Yeah, exactly. And I would never dream of giving them my, you know, expensing my lunch now on editorial shoots. Yeah. It just doesn't. You know, if I'm traveling out of London, maybe a sandwich, but
it is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, we get access to amazing people. So,
exactly.
You know, I do totally get it, and I'm not saying that we should work for free. And
I'm not complaining. Well, I am complaining, but I love it. I absolutely love editorial portrait photography. The access it gives me, the type of people I get to meet, I absolutely love it. So I will keep doing it as long as I can afford to do it.
Yeah, I just want to jump back a little bit. Sophia, to you talked about kind of doing your diploma and coming out of university and assisting. Are there anything? Is there anything that you wish you'd kind of known then, like that now? Is there some areas of the industry that you were, I don't know, you felt like you get taught about enough?
Absolutely. So I did like lots of extremely naive things. Like I remember, carefully printing off, various portraits and, putting them in a nice kind of folder and then sending them off in an envelope with a handwritten letter to picture editors in the vain hope that this would secure me a meeting. And I just know that those photographs went straight in the bin. So wasting my time doing things like that. I mean, maybe it would work for some people. Maybe the portraits that I was sending out weren't that good, but I spent a lot of time approaching picture editors, I think, before I was ready. And actually what I should have done is spend that time shooting and developing my style. So that there would have been
it's hard to know though, isn't it? Because I mean, some of those approaches that you made might well have put you on somebody's radar and they kept an eye on you. And I've met picture editors that, they might not have given you a job that year, but 2 years down the line, you get a job and you're like, oh, where's this come from? And then you turn out that, they've just been keeping an eye on you from afar.
Yeah, actually, they may well have done. I actually can't even remember who I sent those pictures to. So they may well be people that I'm commissioning now, but it's certainly in terms of getting work immediately, that didn't happen. And maybe that approach would work for certain people. But I think, what I should have done is just spent more time just shooting and developing my style instead of trying to get the work straight away. And then other things that I wish I'd known is, well, that I think that photography is not life and death, what we're doing. And I think I took it all way too seriously when I was younger. And it's not to say that I don't take it seriously now. I always try my hardest to get the best on a shoot, and I love it. But the kind of level of stress that I would take on before a shoot, and I would get extremely nervous. I think I've now realised that it's not life and death. It's not brain surgery. It's there to be enjoyed. And I've got to try and learn to enjoy my shoots a little bit more. And then the other thing I kind of wish I'd known sooner is, well, something that I'm applying to the way I take on jobs now, is I only take on jobs if it falls into one of three categories. If it falls into more of those categories, it's fine. But those categories are, is it going to be, a portfolio-worthy job? So am I going to be able to get a really amazing image from this shoot that I could put in my portfolio? The second is financial. So if it's not going to be a job where I'm going to get some, an amazing portfolio-worthy image out of, is it going to, pay very well, in which case I'll take it. And the third is, if it doesn't fall into either of those categories, will I just have fun on it? So it might not pay brilliantly and it may not be a portfolio worthy shoot, but if I know that I'm going to have a really good time on the shoot and it's going to be fun and I'm going to be working with interesting people, then I'll take it on. And if a job comes in and it doesn't fall into one of those three categories, now I don't take it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
That's a fantastic way of doing it.
Obviously you're known for your portrait work and you've shot all sorts of characters over the years, quite a few celebrities, but also kind of these supplement photos. You said like Sunday supplement photos, which, having done them myself, and I know Tom's done that kind of work before as well, it can be very it's challenging. It's interesting and challenging. But what is it that you kind of bring to your shoot? How much research do you do on a sitter before you kind of turn up? Do you find, how do you find that balance and that dynamic when you're shooting with people and taking portraits, in terms of kind of chatting and directing and all of that stuff? Just talk us through kind of a typical job.
So I used to do a lot of research on the individual before I was photographing them. So I would like maybe listen to their audiobook if they'd written a book, or listen to all their podcasts, read all their interviews. And actually, I've now found that's a bit of a hindrance, because you come to the shoot with this, with too much knowledge about the person. So you're not actually meeting them in a fresh and spontaneous way. And I realised that actually knowing all that stuff about the subject doesn't mean that I get a better portrait at the end of the day. So now, obviously, you know, I'll research the basics. So, you know, what their profession is, you know, the basics. But then it means when I meet them on the day, I can have a conversation with them without knowing all the answers already. And it just feels much more organic and spontaneous, and like two people having a, you know, authentic interaction, instead of me secretly knowing, you know, what their children are called and where they live and all of that kind of stuff. So now, instead of doing kind of that kind of research, I'll just do more image-based research. So ahead of the shoot, I will create a mood board, and it will be less about mood and tone, because I think my mood and tone is pretty much consistent throughout all my work. So I'm not trying to copy anyone else's mood or tone, but it will be very much a series of poses that I want to get people into, because, you know, especially if you're shooting in a studio and you're faced with a stool in a white cove, you know, it can be really daunting about how you get something nice and intimate and beautiful out of that. So if you've got a mood board with poses, then if you're feeling a bit stuck for ideas, you can show it to the person that you're shooting, and you can look at it together and kind of have a bit of a collaborative talk about where you want to go with the poses and things like that. So that's the thing that I found most helpful. And then, Greg, what else did you ask? I can't remember now.
Well, I guess it's always interesting finding that balance between directing and talking and holding a conversation with a sitter. I sometimes find that I kind of just get wrapped up in the conversation, especially if it's a really interesting person, and then you kind of feel a little bit like, oh crap, I've got to focus on the pictures. But actually, I'm really enjoying this conversation. It's quite interesting. It's finding that balance quite a lot of the time, keeping your head kind of in both games.
Of course. So what I'll generally do is just try and talk to the person a bit before we start shooting. I'll say, you know, if we're on location, or if we're on location, and I'll maybe say to my assistant, can you just set up these lights? And then I'll chat to the person, we'll have a cup of tea. Or if we're in a studio and the person's getting their hair and makeup done, I'll go and sit and have a bit of a chat with them before then. I'm really interested in styling, so I always like to have a choice in the styling of the clothes. So that can be a conversation that we have where we get to know about each other a bit, where we can look through either the clothes the stylist has brought, or if I'm shooting somebody we don't have a stylist, I would have asked them to bring a selection of clothes, and then we'll go through those together. So that could be a little bit of an icebreaker as well. And then also it's slightly a case of reading the mood as well of the person. You know, sometimes somebody will turn up and you can just tell they don't really want to engage. They're not very interested in having a conversation. They just want to get the job done, in which case that's absolutely fine. I'll respect that. I'm not going to try and engage them in conversation. We'll just get the shoot done. And other times, you know, part of the process for somebody being relaxed is chatting between takes. So we'll shoot and chat and shoot and chat. And yes, it will definitely slow up the process, but it's all about making the subject feel as comfortable as possible. But generally, as a rule, I would say that I personally feel I'm not there to impose myself on the person. You know, it is about them. I don't want to dominate. And I would say my sets are quite quiet. You know, they're pretty chill. They're quite quiet. There'll be a bit of chatting, but I'm not going to, you know, force everybody into like a lot of conversation if that's not the kind of the mood of it, really.
Yeah. I guess when you're doing the group portraits, how do you find the dynamic then can be quite interesting, because quite often if you've got people who have been brought together for a portrait, they might not have seen each other for a while, especially if they know one another. They might not have seen each other for a while. And then you've kind of got to play this dynamic where maybe some of them are chatting throughout the shoot. Some, you know, sometimes it can be a bit unruly. You can have people who are kind of talking.
No, I get it. I would say that I'm pretty strict when it comes to group shots, because often you've got a limited amount of time with the group. So I will generally go in to each position and show the person exactly how I want them to sit or stand. So, you know, if somebody's sitting on the floor, I'll show them exactly how I want them to sit on the floor. then I'll get them in the shot and then just say, stay like that. And then I'll kind of, build the group really, really slowly. And then I am quite strict. I just say, everyone eyes to camera, and take as many frames as I can, and generally keep chatting to a minimum. A group shot is very different from an individual portrait. Because an individual portrait, you're really trying to convey a particular type of emotion. You're trying to get a level of kind of intimacy there, or closeness. You want them to channel something. Whereas I say group shot, it's probably less about mood, or if it's about mood, it's the mood that you create with the lighting, and then it's about composition. So you're not trying to get a certain reaction out of someone. Well, I'm not personally. I don't want people laughing in my shots. It's not really my style. I don't need people to interact in those group shots. So it's
yeah. How complicated are your lighting setups for those kind of shots? Because obviously, and do you get an opportunity most of the time? If we're saying kind of, roughly how often will you get a chance to actually recce the location?
For a group shot, yeah, I would definitely recce a location, just because they come around. They come around so rarely, group shots, and they are complicated. And in terms of lighting and stuff, if you want a big octup on a boom or something, you need to be able to check the ceiling height and all of that kind of stuff. So recce's are really important. But 95% of my shoots, I don't do recce's now. I just get people, if it's the location of the person, the person I'm photographing, it's their house, then I'll just get them to send me iPhone photos.
Right.
So, but for group shots, I definitely do recce's. And in terms of my lighting setup, I always try and keep things relatively simple. I always, my kind of brand of lighting is kind of quite directional light, but clean and soft. I don't want to throw loads of light in there. I always want it to, emulate daylight as much as possible. So it's just about ways of doing that. But I'd say most of my group shots, I've not used more than maybe like 2 or 3 lights on the group shots. So it's
okay. Do you have a preferred, to get techie about it, do you have preferred modifiers that you use, or preferred techniques when you're lighting group shots? Do you tend to use bounce a lot, or do you tend to use kind of large fill and key?
So I don't use bounce for group shots. So the most recent one I did at BAFTA, and that was a group shot of 20 people. I absolutely loved doing it, but we did that in 4 groups of 5, and then we comped it together. So actually, that makes the lighting setup less complicated because you're only lighting 5 people. And for that, I had I rented a 7-foot box. I'd never rented one before. The ceilings weren't very high, so I couldn't get it up very high, and I had it at like a 45-degree angle to the group. And then I had a big umbrella next to the altar, just kind of shooting in the same direction, just to give it a little bit of fill as well.
Yeah, giving you fill.
Yeah. And then I did a series of group shots for House and Garden, which was in this incredible location, and it had daylight. So for that, the way I always light, if you have daylight and you can see windows, as I will always light in the direction of the daylight. So if you've got the windows on the left, then I always have my lights on the left, and then it will emulate the daylight. So that's how I do it.
I mean, certain magazines as well, they have, you see a lot of pictures in mags that people. Do you ever get this? I mean, obviously a lot of your work, as you said, you try and emulate natural light. Do you ever find that you get approached by people who are then baffled when you say that you need to rent or bring lighting? Because I've had it before where people look at your work and then they assume it's all natural light, but actually you're like, no, there's a lot of lighting involved in that to make it look natural sometimes.
Yeah. So actually, the first time Russ, the picture editor of the Sunday Times magazine, came on a shoot with me, I'd already done about 5 jobs for the magazine, and I was putting up all my lights, and he was really shocked. He was like, I had no idea you shot on flash. So yes, that is definitely what happens. But in terms of renting kit, I own 4 heads, and I never, unless it's a really big job, I don't need more than 4 heads for any editorial shoot that I do. So renting kits isn't really a problem. I don't kind of face that problem. But yes, people do think that I shoot natural light, but that's a huge compliment to me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's incredibly hard, notoriously hard to emulate good natural light. So the fact that your portfolio has that, is a great compliment, as you say. So to go back to kind of the other side of business then, how do you stay on top of running your business? Have you bought any kind of, because we quite often find that we speak to photographers and, we're very focused on the creative, but actually quite often when it then comes to the business side and the day-to-day running of the business, that's where some people have strengths, some people have weaknesses. Is it an area that you've had to develop and build? Is it always changing? Is it always developing?
Yeah, in terms of running the business. So, I do it all. I do all of my accounts and retouching. I don't do any outsourcing at all, which is probably not the most sensible thing. But actually, I like doing all of those things and I like having quite a lot of control. In the future, it may be that the level of work that I'm getting, it's actually unattainable. It's impossible for me to do all of that. And in terms of, something that I find invaluable, I think you spoke about this on another podcast and you really dissed this app. I use Evernote, which is like just my everything.
I don't think we really dissed it.
I believe it was Dan Kennedy. Yeah, it wasn't me. I've never used it. But no, he was not a fan of it, I think, because it hadn't been developed as much as, that I remember about 7 or 8 years ago, it was the new big thing and everyone was talking about Evernote and everyone was using it. And I don't think it's been kept up to date, so to speak.
I'm very low tech, so it's ideal for me. And for anyone that doesn't know what it is, it's basically the equivalent of kind of post-it notes on your desktop. So, I'm a big list keeper. I have every single kind of list on there. So I've got a list of who I need to invoice. I keep all my accounts on there. I put all my mood boards on there. I have something called a shoot notes section. So for every shoot, I do something called shoot notes. So ahead of the shoot, I'll plot how I think I'm going to light it. What's the shot list? Keywords that I need to think about in terms of mood, and then I'll have the mood board there, and then it syncs up to your phone, so you can access all of those notes on your phone. So
that's ideal.
It's amazing.
That's ideal, isn't it?
So if I'm on location and I'm not getting my laptop out, then I can show somebody on my phone the mood boards, or I can go back to a previous shoot and check the shoot notes, or the lighting setup that I did for that, and look at that mood board. And then obviously I've always got my never-ending and I never managed to get through a to-do list. I've just got everything on there, and it's unbelievably useful, and I wouldn't be able to run my business without it.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and then other than that, I'm still not on QuickBooks, which everyone seems to be. I do all my invoices by hand and just chase people up myself. I'm afraid I don't have any nuggets of wisdom to offer anyone other than Evernote.
Can we just talk about just general workflow? So obviously kind of like the shoot comes in and you kind of go, right, well, it fits into one of my 3 categories, and then what?
And then what? So obviously I will find out what location we're shooting in. Sometimes I'm required to find my own location. So I'll go on location websites and find somewhere. Or I'll be tasked to find a studio, or I'll be shooting at the subject's house. If I'm shooting at the subject's house, then I often won't go and do in brekkie, because it will take up half a day to go do it, and my time is really precious. So I will get the subject to send me some photos on their iPhone, and then I can start to think about it. If I think there are any real problems, then I can go do a recce. And I do recces for shoots that I feel are really important, where I've got a small amount of time. So if it is a celebrity and I'm shooting them in a hotel and I only have 20 minutes with them, then I absolutely have to do a recce, because I need to know exactly how I'm going to shoot it when I turn up on the day for the shoot. And I also need to have a backup option. I've been sent on shoots where, the editor wants the person shot on a rooftop, and obviously, inevitably, it always starts raining the moment you turn up. So then you need, a plan B. So, yes, I'd say for shoots where time is at a minimum, then breccies are really, really important. And then I'm trying to think how I approach things. So so I approach things from a creative way, which I've talked about, which would be my my mood board, thinking about how I'm going to light it, all of that stuff. And the practical stuff, you know, my kit is entirely comprised of battery-powered lights, which are, I've got Profoto B1Xs and Profoto B10s. So obviously, I have to make sure everything's fully charged, otherwise I'll run into problems on the shoot. And then another side of things is getting myself into like the emotional headspace for a shoot as well, which can be just, you know, when you turn up on a shoot, it's really important that you turn up with a degree of calm and that you're kind of bringing your best self to a shoot, because it's really important that the subject feels really comfortable on the day. So, you know, I've got 2 small children and I have had many a sleepless nights in the last 4 years, and I will often, you know, wake up on the morning of a shoot and I won't have slept for longer than 2 hours straight because I've been up with a teething baby. But it's just very important that before I get to a shoot, I kind of collect myself, I get really calm, and I kind of leave that tiredness at home and just kind of bring my best self to a shoot. And then on the shoot itself, I, you know, for most of my shoots, you know, ideally I would use a combination of like ambient and flash. Like I said, I've got Profoto heads, and the light modifiers I most like using are octoboxes and increasingly now umbrellas for ease of use. I'm really loving my umbrellas at the moment. And when I'm shooting, I'll shoot tethered, which I was really resistant to for many years because it's incredibly exposing, really, to be on a shoot and everybody to be able to see what you're shooting while you're shooting it. And
yeah,
there's
no hiding, right?
There's absolutely no hiding. But actually, what that has forced me to do is become a better photographer, because I do not start shooting now until I know that I've 100% got it. Because, you know, the PR of the person that I'm photographing might be there, the picture editor might be there, the art director, then be people watching over my shoulder. And it has to be good what I'm shooting straight off the bat. So, yeah, it's forced me to be a better photographer. Before I was shooting tethered and I was shooting to the back of my camera, I'd often feel, before we start the shoot, I haven't quite got it, but I'm not sure how to get the perfect shot. So I'll just figure it out in post. Like, I'll just start shooting and figure it out later, which is a really bad and sloppy way to do it. You just want to get everything looking really good on the day.
I mean, we've all done it.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of go into panic mode, don't you? You can't really figure out a way to get what you want. So you just kind of start shooting and are relieved that nobody's looking at what you're shooting. You're just like, well, I'll get it home and then I'll sort it out. Whereas there's just like with shooting tethered to capture, there's just no escaping it. But actually, for me, what's happened is it's really been amazing, because it's just sped up the whole process of editing my work, because I will grade the test shots. So before I actually start shooting the subject, I will get a grade on that I really, really like, and I'll just do that myself quite quickly, and that will be the grade that I work from. So I've got that basic grade to work from when I get home and do my editing, and it doesn't normally deviate from that too much. And also on a shoot, I'll sometimes just star the ones that I really like as well, or get my assistant to star them as we're going along, the really good ones again. So, you know, that minimises the editing process. And so that's what I do in terms of processing my images. So yeah, and I do all my editing on capture. And then, I mean, I think that's it.
Is your laptop, how's your kind of laptop in these situations? So I guess a lot of your portraits, you know, they're relatively static in one location. You might move location. Do you have a particular preferred way of doing that? Because the thing is, when you start tethering, is you kind of start anchoring yourself down. Do you shoot with a tripod much, or do you just have the laptop on a tripod somewhere? Or
no, I don't even have the laptop on a tripod. I really like having as like little kit as possible. I like traveling really light. All my kit can fit into the back of the boot of an Uber. So that's how I like to keep it. So, you know, if I'm in a studio, then there'll be like a trestle table, or, you know, somewhere that I can put my laptop. if I'm on location at someone's house, I'll just put my laptop on a chair. Or if I'm shooting outside, I'll just get my assistant to hold the laptop for me. So I just keep everything like
human
really
tripod.
easy. Exactly, my human tripod.
I can follow you.
Yeah, exactly. And then I do this little thing. It's quite complicated, but I know that you can buy tether jerks, but all the tether jerks that I've bought have been quite rubbish. So I just do like a kind of homemade one where I put, it's too complicated to explain over a podcast, but I put some tape round my my tether cable, and then I insert it underneath the tripod plate. Have you ever done that?
So
too hard to explain.
we've got a product that we could give some free advertisement to.
Yeah, well, I think we both use it, don't we, Greg?
Yeah, it's a piece called Photo Fortress, and
FOTO.
Yeah, it's basically what you're saying. It's a plate that sits on the bottom of your camera, but it takes the wire in and loops it so that it gives you a little bit of security in terms of, because it runs flush down by the side of the camera. Then, I mean, what camera setup are you using actually?
Well, so that's effectively what I do, but I just do my own version with the tripod plate. So I will put the tether cable kind of underneath the tripod plate, kind of secured with some tape.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
This is not a visual medium, so it's probably not the conversation we should be having. But in terms of my kit, again, like, I'm very different from Tom. I just have kit and I stick with it. And I have had my Mark III, my Canon 5D Mark III for how many years? Maybe like 5 years, 6 years, I don't know. And I'm not updated it. I only shoot with prime lenses, and I've just got 3 prime lenses, and I never rent lenses. I've got a 50mm, an 85mm, and both those are Canon. And then I've got a 35mm Sigma, which is actually much better than the Canon. It's like really sharp. But I
That's my favourite lens. That's one of my favourite lenses of all time. I have owned it 5 times.
Why have you owned it 5 times? I'm so confused.
Very good question.
As an avid listener of the show, you know how many times I've swapped systems. So every time I've owned various systems, I tend to have bought it. So I owned it for Sony E-mount, Canon twice, Nikon.
Wow.
Twice Nikon.
Yeah, it's a brilliant lens.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't use it.
Love it.
I don't use it loads just because I use it, we're on location, maybe in someone's house and I'm doing an environmental portrait and there's not loads of space. But I pretty much use my 50mm lens for like 90% of the work that I do. I just love it. It's just brilliant. And I think that's kind of, it means that there's probably quite a uniformity in my style because I'm always shooting with my 50mm and my prime lenses. So, but that's my setup. And then I've got my Pro Photos, which are all battery operated, which is just incredible when you're shooting on location because you just don't have to worry about finding a PowerPoint. You don't have to worry about anyone tripping over anything. It moves really easily. You can do, hundreds of flashes, before you have to even start worrying about the batteries. The battery life is incredible. I've never run into any problems with them on a shoot.
How do you pack that all? Sorry to get really nerdy into kind of kit, but we're often, especially editorial portraiture, it was a bit game changing when the first kind of battery powered lights turned up, back in almost like in the Elinchron Quadra days, when you had smaller battery packs. Being able to actually, turn up to a shoot with a rolling bag full of your lighting kit, whereas before, especially if you're using the old Pro Photo Acute B heads and the power packs, they were massive. But so it is easier now to have a smaller loadout. How do you tend to travel with your lighting kit? Do you have a separate stand bag, or do you use one of those big all-in-one bags, or
no? I've got No, well, they come in rucksacks. So I've got the B10s, which come in like they're tiny. They come in a tiny rucksack, and then B1Xs, which are also in a rucksack. So I just keep them in the rucksack. I actually did a shoot on Monday out of London, which I took the train to because obviously the snow was crazy and it was like no conditions to drive. So for that, I had my camera bag. It was just me and my sister on the train. So I had my camera bag, and then I put the B10s in my long rolling bag, which is what I've got all my light shapers in, all my light modifiers in. But because they're so small, you can just kind of shove them anywhere. And then I had my rucksack with my B1Xs in, and then I had my tripods and my stands in another bag. So I can travel extremely light.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it's always a challenge to try and do it if you're travelling by yourself on public transport. Back in the day when I was...
I don't travel by myself on public transport. I mean, I do remember actually a few trips on the overground when I first started out, when I didn't have an assistant, and it being pretty hellish with my Bowen's lights, which were just extremely cumbersome. So, but now I just get everything in an Uber. I'm not really taking public transport, but I do think if you're doing editorial, being able to really streamline your kit is important. Not having loads of stuff and not having to rent anything, that just eats into your budget.
Yeah, 100%.
Can I do a really tenuous segue?
You think?
Go on.
All right. So with minimal kit and trying to keep it all lightweight, and talking about the future of photography and how all our businesses are going to have to develop and stuff like that, what are your thoughts about incorporating video into your workflow?
It's 100% something that I need to do. I'm really aware of that. Both you and Greg are now not just photographers, but you're photographer directors, aren't you? I think that's now what you have on your website. And I feel like everyone is moving in that direction. And increasingly, we're going to be looking at everything online, and actually moving image is much more dynamic than stills. So I think we're all going to be required to move with the times and start shooting moving image. Saying that, I'm not doing it yet. Because I still feel like I haven't mastered photography, but maybe I'll probably never feel that I've mastered photography. So so I know that I need to do it, but I think that's going to be my project for 2023. But I'm lucky, the Canon system's great for moving image, so I'm hoping the transition won't be too difficult.
No, I mean, you've pretty much everyone has now got a camera that can pretty much shoot whatever you need most of the time. I mean, I think me and Greg, we're kind of just maybe we not jumped the gun a bit, but we kind of got into it quite early. I've really loved shooting it, so I would now say it's probably 50-50 in my job.
That's amazing. And presumably clients are increasingly calling on you to do both as well. You have to be able to offer that to people.
Yeah, honestly, I would say so. I think I've kind of won some big... I mean, the trouble is, right, I do a lot of these commissions that you don't see on the website and you don't see on the Instagram and stuff like that. A lot of my work is stuff I don't show. And I would say most of those projects are now... The reason I got them is because of video, and they're probably a 50-50 split between motion and stills.
No. Yeah. So I think that's where it's going, for sure.
Yeah, personally for me, massively important.
Okay. But that's your sector of the industry. It's not necessarily the way it's going for every sector of the industry.
No, absolutely. I can only ever speak from my experience. But
in terms of portraiture, I don't think we're going to be asked to capture moving portraits for the weekend supplements. But I am.
No, I don't think so.
But I am hoping to get more commercial work over the next few years, and in that sector for sure, I'll be asked to do moving image.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, Sophia. I'm very, very jealous of you. So my editorial work basically kind of almost all dried up during and after COVID. So I would love to be doing more editorial stuff. I really do miss a lot of it. So,
but I think it's always worth reaching out to people. I think picture editors have quite short memories, and unless you're kind of getting in touch, then they probably would have forgotten about you pretty quickly. So. Definitely, you should be reaching out to them. That's when you do more of.
I probably should, shouldn't I? But this is, this is kind of one of the reasons we started the podcast, is to help other people reach out to people and then get a kick up the arse from our guests, because I haven't reached out to anyone in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I should do that. That's one of my biggest bugbears, is just finding going back to being just having no time.
Yeah,
it's always the first thing for me that goes, is the reaching out to people. I always forget to do it. I'm terrible. But
I often do this. I think, well, what do I want to be doing with my career? And then you decide which is the most important thing, and then you kind of pursue that. So if for you're feeling that editorial is really what you want to be pursuing, and that's more important than anything else, then you'll find the time to do that.
That's true.
Hopefully,
that's true. I should. Perfect.
Are there any other aspects that you kind of, if we're talking, aside from the video side of thing, have you thought, how how photography is going to look in kind of 10 years' time, perhaps?
I really have no predictions because I think, it surprises us. When I first started assisting 15 years ago, the look was very lit. Everybody was using Photoshop with abandon. And that was like, when I was looking at agents' websites, that was like the kind of like level of photography I was seeing. And then there's been this kind of huge resurgence of people using film now. And that being like a really big aesthetic, and like, there being no lighting and no obvious retouching. And that, I think people just really want that feeling of authenticity and, the kind of mood that film brings with it. So I have absolutely no idea, because on one hand, there's, huge technological advances being made with, these new types of 3D cameras. And I think we'll see much more like 3D imagery in terms of moving imagery. But and on the other side, there's also a huge appetite for people shooting on film and, minimal intervention in terms of technology. So I really couldn't say at all. I really could. I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue. But I think personally, I'm just going to keep my head down and just like do what I enjoy doing and not try and be swayed by fashion, because I think you've got to be true to your own style, and hopefully people will come to you for that. But I'm not going to suddenly start shooting in a specific way because I feel that's where photography's going.
Yeah.
Smart.
That's wise. I mean, you've got to be kind of finding your own natural evolution with it. Obviously, our work changes as our careers change, but it's finding that balance between kind of following the trend, but also following your heart in a way, and doing what you want to do, because that's why you're being hired. Is people like the way that you see the world?
Hopefully.
Yeah, interesting. Well, the final question that we tend to ask all our guests is about
what do you mean we tend to ask?
We always ask. Without a fail.
We tend to ask. Sorry. The problem is Sophia listens to the show, Greg.
Yeah, that's true.
So we can't get anything past
I don't even need to ask the question then.
I know exactly what exactly. So if you were going to send me to Desert Island Disc, what camera would I take and what photo book would I take?
Sophia, sorry, the lawyers are here in the room with me. We're not allowed to say the actual name of the show we're ripping off.
Yeah. Not anything to do with discs.
Okay. Sorry. I'm sure you say Desert Island. If you cast me off to a desert island.
Yeah, but you added the disc.
No, I added the disc. Sorry, I didn't mean to add disc. Sorry. Slip of the tongue.
And this is the final episode of the Exposed Negative.
My camera would be my Hasselblad 503CW. It was the first serious camera I bought in my early 20s when I graduated from uni. I bought it on finance, and it just felt like such a crazy investment. But it really helped me develop my style as a photographer. I shot for film on film for the first
probably
few years.
Worth twice what you paid for it now.
I know, exactly. I mean, I haven't looked into it, but I'll never sell it just for sentimental purposes. And it's what I shoot all my personal work on. And it is just a joy to shoot with. I don't find holding a digital camera up to my face and taking a photograph a joyful act, but taking a photograph on my Hasselblad, I just love it. I just think it's just amazing, the sound that it makes.
There is something about it, isn't it?
Oh, it's just amazing. And also the glass, of the lenses is so beautiful when you look through the prism and you're, focusing the image and it's coming into focus. It just makes the world look about 100% better. It's just an amazing camera. So that would be my Desert Island camera.
I'm with you.
And then my Desert Island photo book would be, I mean, it's quite.
This is great, Greg. We don't actually. We could just sit back and enjoy this bit.
Would be well. It's a really shamefully, because I only studied photography for a year, and we didn't have any history of photography or anything. It was purely practical. So I kind of discovered photographers quite late in the day, and I only discovered Irving Penn a couple of years ago, and I was just blown away by his stuff. And he's got a book called Centennial, which is kind of a load of his images, but particularly there's these images that he shot in kind of post-war America. They're like kind of late 1940s, and they're studio portraits. And they're now, you know, over 70, 80 years old, and I still think they look incredibly modern. And they're just black and white portraits shot in the studio, completely pared back, you know, no props, maybe like somebody leaning on a table covered in a rug or something, but I just love them. I think they're amazing portraits, so definitely seek them out.
Nice.
Fantastic. Well, at this point, we should probably also mention your own book for listeners who aren't aware, but you've had your own book published. Was it with Hoxton Mini Press, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was with Hoxton Mini Press last year, which was pretty exciting. The one good thing to come out of the pandemic. So
yeah, well, it's a beautiful book.
Thank you.
I don't own it, but I've browsed it.
I will send you a copy.
It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's very kind of you. You don't need to do that.
I got
need
given
to remunerate you.
No, I got given kind of 20 copies or something, and then I don't really know what to do with them because it seems a bit kind of cheesy, like handing them out to people. So, but because you don't have one, and you've mentioned it, it's a great calling card. I know, but it does feel a bit embarrassing, like turning up for a meeting, like wielding my book and giving it to people. So you guys get one for sure. That's your Christmas present from me.
Oh, bless you. Oh, thank you so much.
Very kind. Well, listen, the people should check it out. It's Park Life: A Love Letter to London's Green Spaces, and it's a beautiful book. It was. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I know we've done our final question, but actually, whilst we're on the subject, tell us a little bit about the book because people should go out and seek it out.
Obviously, in March 2020, you know, if you're a photographer, all your work dried up overnight, and we all found ourselves twiddling our thumbs. You guys started a podcast. But I decided to take out my camera and shoot in the one place that we were all allowed to go, which was the parks. And actually, parks kind of really hold a really special place in my heart. I'm a born and bred Londoner, and I honestly just think like London's parks are incredible. Like, I'm obsessed with trees, and I just love how green the city is. And I think that time when we couldn't do anything but go to parks, everybody started appreciating the spaces that we had. And they actually, you know, acted as a real kind of balm and a place of solace for everybody to kind of go to in these kind of turbulent times. So, so just over the course of a year, I just went to probably maybe 60 or 70 London parks or green spaces all over London and just shot people's portraits. And Hoxton Mini Press decided to publish it, which was really exciting. So that is the book. So it's kind of street photography, but in parks instead, in that tradition of street portraiture, but in parks instead. So,
and is it all digital or film?
It was all shot on film. Full shot on film.
Yeah, was it shot on your Hasselblad that you've taken to the island?
It was shot on my Hasselblad, and what was so amazing about that was, you know, I'd stopped all my kind of commissioned work, and I just went back to basics in terms of photography. So I would put my Hasselblad in my rucksack with some film and my light meter and get on my bicycle and bike somewhere, you know, bike to South London or North London or wherever. And I had very short time frames in which I could work because I had a baby at the time. She was 14 months old and she slept for 2 hours at lunchtime, and then she went to bed at 7 o'clock every night. So I would go out during her lunchtime nap when my husband was working from home, or I'd go out on my bicycle when she'd gone to bed. So there are a lot of kind of magic hour kind of photographs.
Yeah.
And it was kind of amazing. It really reignited my love of photography, which was just like back to basics, me and my camera, you know, outside, and meeting some really interesting and lovely people in the process. So it was really fantastic thing to do, and it was, you know, completely kept my sanity during that kind of mad time.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice to hear. Well, listen, I tell you what, thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to find you, not in real life, but like if people want to find you virtually, where can they find you online?
They can go to my website, which is sophiaspring.com, or they can find me on Instagram, and I think I'm _Sophia_Spring. I think that's it. And that's it. Yeah. Drop me a line, say hello. So yeah, that's it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. We really appreciate it.
Not at all. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks very much for watching the latest episode of The Exposed Negative. If you found it interesting or just want to feedback, or you've got any comments or guest suggestions or anything that we can do to improve the show, please email us at info@exposednegative.com. You can follow us on Instagram @xnegative. And if you want to follow us personally, why wouldn't you? It's @tombarnes.com and @Greg Fennell. And really hope you enjoy the next episode.